Welcome to the 100 Days Unleashing My Superpowers campaign. Today, I have an incredible global mining STEM leader, Deshnee Naidoo. Deshnee is one amazing role model for most women in mining, including myself. I've known Deshnee for more than 15 years, from our good old days at Anglo Platinum. She not only shattered the glass ceiling of the boys' club in mining industry, but she's also been a trailblazer in advocating for more women to have a seat as leaders in mining. She's a chemical engineer by profession. She started her mining career at Anglo American, where she built her career, rising up the ranks and holding various leadership roles across different geographies. She was selected as one of the 100 most inspirational leaders in mining, UK. She was CEO of Vedanta, Zinc International in 2014, with responsibilities in Africa, Europe, and Australia. She's a board member of the Minerals Council South Africa and has recently been appointed Director, Finance and Business Development for a global mining company, Vale. We had a great interview, and one question that I was keen to get an answer from her was, how should leaders break the boys' club culture in the mining industry to be the preferred employer of choice? Let's face it, the boys' club does exist and becomes even stronger as you move up the ladder. If the mining is to redesign a smart mine of the future, which is diverse, inclusive, and ultimately becomes the investor, employer, and stakeholder of choice, in light in particular of the ESG requirements, what should the CEOs of these mining companies be focusing on to ensure women have a seat on the table, have a voice? I welcome you to watch this video below as Deshnee shares her words of wisdom about the above. She's a phenomenal force of good leader in advocating for more women to have a seat as leaders in mining. Thank you. What were some of the barriers that you actually experienced yourself personally?
The first barrier was decision-making in mining companies were in the hands of men. So, it's difficult to now tell someone, well, actually, that's not right, because the majority of the people around you are men, are actually making decisions. As a result, policies and practices, which, you would remember as well back in the day, were quite few and far between, but they were very paternalistic. So decision-making was in the hands of men, and then the policies as well that were not quite tailored to support women in our industry were also very paternalistic. And I think the bigger one for me is how women lacked voice across every channel of business. We lacked voice. We were not empowered enough. And I think also now when I look at us as women, I don't think we took empowerment as well. So there's something about being empowered, and there's something about picking up your hand and saying, well, actually, you're wrong. Let's do something about it. So if I have to look at it on a more generic basis, that's what I would mention as barriers. Simply put, I entered the mining industry in 1997, 1998, after having a bursary for a few years before that. The numbers just stacked up against me. I had all odds, against me as well. And that. So from a CEO point of view, I was the only female among 7 or 8 CEOs across Vedanta. And that's when you start to see, not just the career progression issues, because now you're there, you have an equal seat at the table. I think the barriers there are more legacy issues. Historically, women were not allowed at this table. So I think you still get individuals that know it's wrong, but the mindset of older CEOs are still very much in the legacy era. And then societal, I worked across various cultures, and the way some cultures and society look and treat you are very different to others. And I think also, barriers could, for me in this role, were also making sure that, I was very, decisive in terms of making a decision about getting more women into the organization. But it was how the uptake within the company and the greater ecosystem was also, I would also call it a barrier.
Which talks to unconscious bias.
So I would get into a meeting, not everyone does their homework to know who the CEO of the company is. There were those odd few people I didn't know. I would walk into the room, Patience, and they would still expect the CEO, still wait for the CEO to arrive, right? So there you go. And then oftentimes in very senior government meetings, could be not so much on the client side, because, clients or service meetings, they know who to go and focus on. But in traditional, hierarchies, I would have maybe a junior assistant next to me, and a man on the other side would choose to look at him whilst addressing a question that I've just asked. So that is there, right? Even in greater industry conversations, I've done mining Indaba a few times, Joburg Indaba, etc. I think I've also been seen as that student that had the bursary, there was a graduate that came through the ranks. So in certain circles, I think I was always that graduate, right? No matter how old you get, to some individuals that remember you in that stage, that is what they would remember. And you could see in certain circles, I was still always, irrespective of being the CEO of Vedanta International, seen as that graduate from Anglo American, right? And to your point about, unconscious bias, it's in the body language.
Yeah.
It's in the body language of how I'm treated, or asked to go and fetch something, or asked to go and, if something needs to happen from an admin point of view, then all of these men would look at you to do it. So that, I would say, I would call that as kind of unconscious bias. But also, I think culture, and something we mustn't forget, we're almost trying to get corporates, especially mining, to be a certain way, because we know it's the right way, right? We need women in certain roles, we're working towards it. But I think in a lot of these men's personal lives, most of them, their wives don't work. Their mothers are probably at home. And you could, in certain situations, still see that coming into.
Those epiphany moments that you have that you can think about. It can be one, it can be two, it can be three.
Patience, I've had a very atypical journey, right? And there's a reason for that. So I told you I had the bursary from Anglo American, but I also got married very young. So I got married at the age of 22. So don't worry, that wasn't the epiphany moment. I got married, just to be very clear there. So I got married at the age of 22, and I had my first daughter at 24. That changed my career path as well. So, typically when you become a grad, you need to go onto site and have a graduate program. I didn't see that graduate program on site. I actually came into a corporate office environment for Anglo American, and that put me on a very different path. So it's against that background. If I think back, the way mining worked then, and it still works like that to some extent, that you had to have done the time and the experience to get promoted. Mm-hmm. So, some of the moments for me where, when I took the planning and strategy role within Anglo Platinum, a role I know you know very well because you were in a similar team as well, that role almost took me away from technical ops. Oh, that was the first step. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a role that also showed me that, maybe I like finance. That was the first inclination, that maybe I like finance and maybe I'm going to be really good at it. So doing the valuation work was, I think, the first epiphany. Then when I got that call to say, come and run a plant so that we can promote you, right? I then set up a meeting with the CFO for Anglo Platinum at the time, Roland van Kerkhoven, and I told him who I was, and I asked him for an opportunity within the corporate finance team of Anglo Platinum, a role I know you know very well as well, because I was next to you, I think, on the same floor. Another amazing moment, because my career could have gone, in a very different route had I made the plan to get to site, but I chose corporate finance. And I think from an epiphany moments, kind of being at the right place at the right time, it was in that role that I met one Mr. Craig Miller, who was Cynthia Carroll's executive assistant at the time, who was about to leave our office and asked me if this is a role I would consider. And that role, that conversation led to the deputy head of the CEO's office for Anglo American, and that really changed the course of my career. And if I think about another moment in that during that role, it was talking to Cynthia Carroll. Up until that point, Patience, I thought that if you had to be successful career-wise, you had to have sacrificed something else, be it you're married, your children, you can't have it all.
Yes.
And Cynthia Carroll, the formidable Cynthia Carroll, was a mother of 4 children herself. She started to show me, I saw it as to how to make this work. And that told me what actually start preparing for big things, because it can in fact happen. I put everything into that role, and that role led to another defining moment for me in becoming, after that role, I became Anglo American's first non-CA CFO for one of their divisions. So I have lots of little stories. I don't think there was one big thing.
The role of mentorship, of coaches, of sponsors.
The roles of sponsors, coaches, mentor are pivotal. Are absolutely pivotal. In my career, I can honestly tell you, I wouldn't be where I was without these various individuals. And there were so many of them. Patient. There was no, 2 or 3 people that I can single out, because it was almost organic. It wasn't something that I sought to go after. It was almost, do your day job and then get recognized. But I mean, to give you a few examples, I told you I started young, right? Married at 22, yes. First child at 24. I then had my other 2 kids quite close as well. And I remember having a conversation with either Peter Charlesworth or Mike Hallett at the time, when one of my kids was very sick and I kept on having to leave, etc. And it was definitely Mike Hallett now that I remember. And he told me, Deshnee, just leave early. If you leave as early as you need on as many days as you need to. You know what he said, Patience, and I'll never forget this. Wow. He said, if we as Anglo Platinum can't accommodate you, someone that we see as talent, someone that we want, for the short period of your life when you're a mother of young children, then we don't deserve to call ourselves a company that cares. That really resonated with me across my journey. And you know what I then did? I left early because I need to take care of my child. What do you think you do after your child is down? You then give your heart and soul back into a company that has supported you. Okay, so I had that. But all of my line managers, if I think about Gordon Smith, if I think about Dr. Larry Kramer, people are still keep in touch with me. Martin Prince, they were all at different stages of my career, not just on the job, but in the personal situation, supported me to find that balance between both. I continue to then develop relationships with people inside and outside the organization, because I think that's also important. I did something quite, I talk about atypical, but it was also atypical that I stayed in Anglo American for 16 years, right? And I think what I soon realized as well, as much as I was having a very enriching, diverse experience within the company, I also lacked perspective. I lacked perspective. Okay. So what I then started to do was to, seek people outside of, Anglo American, but within the industry, to make sure that I still stayed current from a perspective point of view outside. Then if I have to look at Cynthia Carroll specifically, Cynthia Carroll, the role firstly changed my life, changed my career. And I always say, no matter what I go on to do, that would be one of the most defining roles that I did in my career. Because it took me, at a very young age, understanding, a very focused area, to now growing, on the top of Anglo American and understanding through Cynthia Carroll's office how a multinational conglomerate works and functions at that level. And that kind of experience was invaluable, understanding how to support the CEO make the decisions that she had to. So if I have to look at how she inspired me in the role, she also had a lot of barriers to face. She was CEO of Anglo American in 2007 until 2014. And, you could see, she also had her share of critics within the industry. So I saw how she navigated that. And very similar to what I then learned and what I do now, she stayed very focused on the job. So I learned that from her, number one. She also never really read, which I thought was amazing, the criticisms. The few articles that she received that were negative, it never bothered her because she never read it. And I thought, wow. Then I also learned that there are times that as much as you want to be authentic and personalize things, but also know when to grow a thick skin. You're going to need it, right? And focus on the end goal as opposed to the hurt that you feel at the moment. And then most importantly was how she managed her family. Cynthia Carroll was a very hands-on mother, a very hands-on mother. Up till today, if I speak to her about what the kids are doing, she knows exactly what each one is doing at university, what courses, what's next, etc. And I learned from her how to be a hands-on virtual mom. So it doesn't mean you're not with your child, you don't know how to stay engaged. In Cynthia's calendar at the time, we used to pen in, when it was Ben's soccer practice or one of the kids' piano lessons. So no matter which country we were in the world, she could still phone either before or after to either coach before or ask afterwards, how did it go? Phenomenal.
What are some of the, maybe just on the life work balance? I think you did mention a bit on that. For women who are struggling, and how did you do it? I know you mentioned Cynthia Carroll, but how did you balance your really high profile job as a CEO with your beautiful daughters? How did you balance it with your husband? How did you balance that life?
About corporates understanding the phase that you are in as a woman in your personal life and trying to accommodate you, during that period. So the one policy that I came up with at Vedanta, and it was given this exact name, Patience, was the policy for flexible working arrangements for mothers of young children. They said, Deshnee, it's too long. I said, no, but it tells you exactly what it should be. Right?
That's really great.
But that's the kind of stuff. And it's not only for that. I mean, you could be a woman that's a wife, but not a mom. And you would need different kind of support. Maybe you want to study further. So it's picking those big kind of milestones in a woman's life outside of work and trying to, as a corporate, offer her support during those various phases in her life. And so, and I felt that I did have that within Anglo American. Because I think we also think maternity leave. Yeah, maternity leave is important, but she's still going to breastfeed, and we want her to do for as long as she can. How do we support her in the work environment? But in terms of what you just said, there's so much we need to do as mining, but also greater corporates. Be upfront. Tell a woman that you're about to hire, that you're about to then go and invest in her development, that you're a company that will support her. Be specific about the support. In addition, fathers have a role to play as well. And I think as corporates, some corporates have led the charge here. Why is maternity leave is not, shared by the mother alone, make it a joint responsibility, and make sure that there are as progressive policies for paternity leave, and not just paternity leave, but for paternity support when the children are young too.
What do you actually think organizations should be doing? And we don't know if we're going to have, I mean, we now have a vaccine, but we don't know other, COVID phases which may come in the future. What do you think organizations need to do to support women and men?
So what I'd like to see here is in mining companies specifically, because that's my area, my domain,
Yes.
is reimagining what the future of mining would look like, right?
Yeah.
And against that future, create a blueprint for what your organization needs to look like. So instead of saying, hey, my recruitment policy is pro-woman, I'm saying, sorry, gone are the days. In that blueprint and in the new way of working that all of these factors now create the opportunity for, design the roles that women can take up. Don't say, oh, well, I recruited, I couldn't find anyone, so I had to now settle. No, no, no. Design in the blueprint an organization for the roles that women can now take up and get the basics right to get women into those roles. And the basics I'm talking about, from the policy side to practices to physical environments, get the basics right. And of that baseline, then you can decide, how much more you want to do on, what we call from proven measures to hidden gems, etc. But get the foundation right on the new way of working, not on the way mining was in the past. And linked to all of this, I mentioned leadership commitment, but I'm also talking about leadership tone.
Yes.
At Vedanta, and you would have seen us in the industry, Vedanta was very, and still is very progressive in terms of gender diversity.
Yes.
You were very humbling to me in terms of, how my career has had progress. Think about Anil Agarwal and the opportunity he gave me coming out of Anglo American. Up until that point, I had only been in specialized roles. I had not been in general management type roles where I had production experience, large scale technical experience. He met me, saw something in me, and gave me an opportunity. So when we talk about leadership tone and commitment, I'm saying, can our male leaders today start taking more risk on women and start putting them into the roles? And you know what, Patience? So what if we get it wrong? That's okay. How many times did the industry get it wrong in terms of the men that they put into various roles? So
exactly.
Take more risk. Simply, leaders, if you really want to get this right, start to take more risk. And in taking those risks, right, and in setting the targets and in showing that commitment, you don't have to get a consultant to help you drive culture. The culture change becomes organic. And what I'm talking about, Patience, is hard wiring an organization to work like this, as opposed to say, I opportunistically will try and find, 4.5 years ago or so now, he called a meeting on a Saturday morning with all 7 of our CEOs then. He told us in the meeting that by Monday, not by 2025, he said by Monday, he wants 30% female representation in each business excos. Done. You know what he said to us then? And he told this to me many times, that if I don't get the job done, he'll fire me. But he told us that if you can't do it, I'll find the CEO that can. Externally, if I look at SDG, if I look at focus on ESG, etc., the boys' club is about to be broken, whether they like it or not. Okay, so there's a lot more external pressure. So that's the first thing. So I think what's happening to these many women, and I've experienced it as well, is that these boys that still want to stay in their club are holding on for dear life, right? So here's the opportunity. These boys' club type leadership teams are going to need women, not only because of the external pressure, Because the good news about this external pressure, if mining companies don't start to look a certain way, they're not going to find access to money. So for the first time, and this is why I'm loving social investing, because the money is putting the right amount of pressure, right? So what you just asked me, actually the responsibility is on the woman. You know the Boys Club has to be broken because they need to look and act a certain way. They need to be very diverse organizations or they will not stand in line for money. So my advice is for the women to start readying themselves to lean into the opportunities that will have to come their way and be ready, not just to step in and learn, but be ready to excel. And that is so important. You know, something we didn't, get to talk about, but in my career as well, Patience, I always gave over 100%. I always. It wasn't the exception, it was the rule. And there's something there about it's unfair. Yeah, it is unfair. Life is a little unfair. For as long as the industry is not gender balanced, we have to push ourselves harder. Okay. So that we push ourselves harder. And the reason I'm saying this is twofold. Number one, you don't want to ever give these boys club individuals reason to doubt the fact that reason that they made the wrong decision. Oh God, I hired her and look, she stuffed up. And I'm really simplifying this because there are very genuine, authentic male leaders out there. I've worked with them, but I'm just saying, get your house in order, woman. Get your house in order. Get it right. The pressure is coming from externally. It's a matter of time before these boys' clubs are broken down, but you create the force from within to start readying yourselves for the positions that will have to come your way. For the women out there that are hungry, and there's so many more, right, today versus 5 years, 10 years ago, don't wait for HR to develop you. Start mapping out the opportunities that you want to lead into and start readying yourself. Yes, you're going to have to work outside of normal hours. Yes, you're going to have to do a lot more. It's worth it. If you are that hungry, push yourself. We're in a war. We're going to win this. We're going to lose a few battles. Start arming yourself for making sure that we win this, right? And maybe the last thing, I never want to have these kinds of diversity conversations, Patience, without, with bashing men. We don't bash men, right? I am where I am because of the many men that have supported my career, and I am so grateful for them, okay? I have worked in South Africa on the Minerals Council, where I was surrounded by 25, 30 male CEOs, okay, too many, we're going to address that, who were so supportive of me and of the industry at times who genuinely want to do the right thing. So the message there, and it's the last message I want to leave with you, is that men are the allies. Men, we need to forge partnerships with men. In this entire journey, this is not about for women, by women, of women. Yeah, we put in an unfair situation. Stop almost looking at men of the past. Start looking at the men of today in terms of how we need to work with them to mold men as our allies to support us to what mining in the future are going to look like, and start making that serious. Because even in a lot of conversations, we tend to exclude the voice of men in these conversations. So this is not about bashing men. I've enjoyed my career. They've kept me on my toes. I've kept them on their toes. But both men and women have got roles to play to make sure that the industry does become gender balanced.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Deshnee. I really greatly appreciate you taking time in your busy schedule with your family to really share your story. This has been amazing, Deshnee. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for asking me, Patience, and all the best with your project. You're going to do well. And we'll make sure that we give your research project the right attention within the industry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.